Welcome to A Lot Going On with Raj Katecha. Today is a great show because we get to bring out to the forefront some stories that I've heard from my friend, an entrepreneur, an award-winning entrepreneur no less, Romaa'l Patel, co-founder of TheProperty.ae. How's your body clock? I know you've been 7 hours east and 7 hours west. You've been in London and Malaysia. Are you feeling like delusional or ready to have a
Slightly
chat?
delusional, but I'm ready to have that chat.
Yeah, nice. And where I want to kind of spend a bit of time, and I think the kind of story that I've heard from you that I really want to share with our audience here on A Lot Going On is kind of like the similarities that we've had when it comes to like the inspiration and work ethic. So we're going to get into all that. Obviously, all roads lead typically back to immigrant parents. But for a bit of context, where you at right now? So how long in Dubai? What you doing? What's making you happy out here right now in terms of like career, personal life? Like just give people an overview.
So, Mel, I've been out here just over 15 years. I've always been in the real estate industry. What's making me happy right now is that I've recently just got married.
Hey, congratulations.
And I guess just life in general. It's just buzzing. Everything is buzzing. I just feel great. Everything just feels awesome. I travel a lot now, and
You weren't before?
I not so much. I was invested quite heavily into work and trying to build myself and trying to build my brand and build the company with Thomas. And I didn't really manage to get away. If I did get away, it was only 1 or 2 days here and there. But I've actually taken 2 weeks out of the business without dabbling into any emails or calling any of the team.
Nice.
It was complete time out, which I needed and which my husband needed, in fact. So
Did you when you were setting the business up, did you get any like burnout? Did you have those moments where like, oh, I can't
massive.
get out of bed?
Yeah, a lot of the time. But I mean, burnout or no burnout, you just got to keep going, right? Because
Yeah.
it's about making sure that you get to that final goal of hitting the company and getting to where you want to get to.
Yeah. What's interesting as well about the time that we've both been in business, which give or take is within a few years of each other, is that like when we started doing this, the mental health, the burnout, the centering, spirituality, it was dotted around, but you'd have to go to different parts of the internet 15 years ago and then manually sellotape it all together. Whereas now, what I think is quite interesting is that people are almost trained and conditioned to recognize when something negative might be coming down the path for them. How do you avoid burnout now? Because if anything, you got more on your plate. You're leading a decent sized company. We'll get into that. You've got awards coming in, which means that you're doing something right. You're married, and like with all Dubai people, you have to live an international lifestyle because even if you just go home to visit family, that's a day out. Like that's 7 hours in the air. Anything that makes your spider senses go off in terms of like, oh, I've got to be careful, like might be overdoing it.
I'll be honest with you. It's a really good question because before I couldn't manage the burnout and I just kept going. You either go into flight or fight mode, right? You just keep going. But I've introduced more sound healing into my day-to-day activities, and I do that at least 3 times a week.
The large copper bowls.
Yeah, and they actually do them with the glass bowls as well. And then they do the copper bowls, they do the glass bowls, and they have the didgeridoo.
Yeah.
And it's in this kind of immersive room where you are in the dark, and they have all of these pictures and videos kind of floating all the way around you, and it makes you feel like you're in a different world because the images are very different each week or every other day. Then they also do sound healing, floating sound healing at the One and Only, and they put you on these massive blow-up beds and they put you in a pool. You probably got about 50 people at a time doing it, and
In the same pool?
In the same pool,
Wow.
on these double bed blow-ups, and the sound healing part of it has really kind of allowed me to balance myself throughout the whole journey. When I feel like I'm getting that burnout, I every night I like to walk now, and I find that really helps me do a nice big power walk along the harbour. And then every other day I'll do a sound healing session. So that really has helped me balance, the madness that goes on day to day.
Yeah.
To then be able to go home and relax. And I do a lot more journaling now. So I actually write down my thoughts, my feelings, my dreams for the future, my manifestation, shall I say? And
You got set
I
headlines in your journaling. Like, have you got certain headlines that you're like, in every entry I must cover?
Not really, no.
No.
It all really depends on how I feel on that day. So I actually write down the things that I could have done better if I've acknowledged that I didn't do it right throughout the day, and that could be how I maybe dealt with a member of staff, or how I maybe dealt with a client. And if I'd put the phone down, I thought, shit, I could have done that bit better, or I could have done it this way, I could have done it that way. I write that down to remember it. At the end of the week, I also go back and read, what's happened throughout the week, and kind of acknowledge that. And I wouldn't say practice to make things better, but just to acknowledge that I've done that, and this is what I could have done, and maybe done it better, or maybe done it worse. I don't know, in my own little way. I can't explain it, but
is there any themes in that? Like, is there any clusters of like moments that you reflect on that perhaps can be associated to being downstream from being a female entrepreneur in Dubai, or downstream from being a female in real estate, or just generally being in real estate? Like, I've spent a bit of time with you at the office and we've hung out, not least the fact that you've got 3 huge divisions in your business, but there's a lot going on, and the name of this podcast is A Lot Going On.
And I think that's the beauty about being in business, and there being so many divisions. I mean, every day is a different day. So yeah, when I journal, it's never always the same, or I never see myself repeating the same thing in my journal. And I try to also not journal only about work. It's about personal life, and what I'm trying to manifest for the future. So I try and keep a balance in that journal as well. I mean, yeah, I write about what experiences I've had throughout that week or throughout that day, but I don't focus it purely just on work. It's how I felt throughout the day. If I felt, did I feel my energy levels going down at one point? Why were they going down? What was I feeling at that particular moment in time? Could I have come out of the office and gone for a walk if I was feeling a little bit down at that moment in time? Or if I was like really hyper and I noticed, because remember, my energy reflects on my team, right? So if my energy is hyper and I'm out there, like yesterday I came back, and these Lulu bears, or whatever they are, the Lulu toys, or Lullaboo, what are they called?
Something like that. I saw them all over Instagram, because there was a launch in Dubai recently, wasn't there? For it?
So I was in Malaysia, and they had a Pop Mart shop downstairs in one of the malls. So I thought, you know what, let me just pick them up for the team. And I picked up 3 massive boxes, and inside each box has like 30 different variations of them. And I noticed that the energy that I brought into the office, that energy was kind of alight with the whole team. And then they started playing the song on the speakers, and I started giving them the little boxes. And the amazing thing is, you don't know what you're going to get in these little boxes, right? So the whole excitement is that you rip it open and you get what you're given, in effect. But that energy kind of got the team going. But if I go in and I've had, I don't know, a really bad morning because I spilt coffee on my T-shirt, and then I've kept that bad mood or that energy inside me, and I walk into that office with that energy, I automatically see it in my team. They're kind of like a little bit, shall I go and speak to her? Shall I not? And I don't want that. So I have to keep bringing myself back and understanding, how was I throughout the day? What could I have done differently throughout the day? So yeah, if I've had a shit morning and I've brought that shit energy into work, I have to reflect on that and make sure that I don't do that, because I don't want the team to have a shit day because I've had a shit day.
So more than like a chief executive officer, the way that you have set your business up, you're more the chief energy officer.
Yeah, I would say that, because I think Tom, he's very auditory. He's kind of all behind the scenes in the sense of making sure that everything's in the right place with websites and leads and. But I'm, like they say, I have that woman's touch in the office where I need to make sure that the energy is right in the office and the team are happy. And I'm the instigator when it comes to booking the team nights out, the dinners. Sometimes I feel, if the guys are just sitting in their chair and they've been in their chair for a long time, I'll literally get them all up and say, right, we're going for a walk around the block. Just to kind of get them going again, because, they're at their computers, they're working away, and then they forget to give themselves a break. So I have a little reminder on my phone every other hour to get up and walk for 10 minutes. So I take them all with me, and we go for a little walk around the block.
Who gave you that empathy?
It just came. I just kind of, it's inside me, I guess. And Tom sits inside the office. He doesn't come with us. But then I send him pictures of us either sitting on his car or sitting on someone else's car, or doing silly things around the office. It just kind of wakes them up a little bit, I guess, and gives them that love.
Have you seen any other examples of people that do that quite well? Like maybe in your past?
Not really, no.
Nobody you've ever worked for or
No.
anything. So
No.
so actually maybe what you've done is you forged a path here in terms of like becoming or manifesting being the leader that you want to be.
Yeah, and I've purposely done that because I've worked for a number of people all my life, and I feel that I wasn't recognized for who I was and what I was bringing to the table until one day I said, I no longer want to work here and I resign. All of a sudden, they acknowledged what I brought to the table. And the resignation wasn't there for me to then come to a negotiation on, yeah, okay, I'll give you more or not. It just got to a point where I was like, no, I'm done. I want to start my own now, and this is what I want. I want to be able to leave something for my children one day. And I think, having those experiences in the past, I don't want anyone else to feel like that in the future. So what I wanted as a person when I worked for a company and I didn't get, I implement that into my business. So every 3 months, I make sure that I reward individuals for things that they have done well. So we have the highest Google reviews. I always, push the guys to get Google reviews. We have a bonus that goes out to the person that has the highest Google reviews, top salesperson, top rentals person. We have funny jokes in the office as well, like little certificates that we give out. Like we have one lady who does deals, and then she'll just go on holiday for like a month, and then she'll do a deal and she'll go on holiday for a month, which is great. I mean, she's earning great money, and so be it. But we have funny little rewards as well that we give out to our staff, and again, that just makes them feel a little bit more valued. And I want my people to know that they are valued. They are my assets, and without them, I don't have a company. So I want to be able to make sure that I take care of them, because they go above and beyond. Most of them go above and beyond to do their job, and they don't have to. I mean, I'm pushing them out of the door at 6 o'clock. Go home. This is your time. You're with me from 9 to 5. Once you've got your work done, go home. After 9 to 6. You're with me from 9 to 6. After 6, go home. Go spend that time with your family, your friends, your loved ones. On the weekends, I don't want you working. And some of my team come and say, no boss has ever told me that. But there's got to be a balance. They also have to enjoy that the country that they live in. It's not all about work, because they'll burn out otherwise.
Do you think there is a toxic hustle culture in real estate right now?
Yeah, 100%.
I've never met, and we've never had this conversation, a CEO who's like, balance is coded right into my business.
Has to be. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. When I was a broker, there was a saying that you snooze, you lose. And for brokers, I feel that is still the case, because agents are multiplying by the day at the moment. Back 15 years ago, there weren't as many brokers as they are today in today's market. So maybe, yeah, they will answer the phone at 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember going out as a broker signing MOUs at 2:30 in the morning, making my way to the airport because the seller is about to leave the country or the buyer is about to leave the country, and that was my only opportunity to get that MOU signed. So, yeah, I guess if you're a broker, it's different, but there still has to be a balance. You still got to have a little bit of, I would say, yeah, in fact, yeah, have a little bit of respect for yourself as well, and,
boundaries?
Yeah, and have some boundaries. And like with me, I wouldn't do viewings on properties after 9 o'clock. I just wouldn't do viewings after 9 p.m. And that was just me. I'm not doing viewings after 9 o'clock. I'll come and do viewings with you on the weekend. I'll come early in the morning before you got to go to work and drop your kids off. No problem. I'll come as early as 6 a.m., 5 a.m. No problem. But in the evening, no. After 8 o'clock, it's home time for me.
So this all obviously contributed to like your awareness around like lack of appreciation, which seems to me like that's something that you want to never see happen inside your organization. When you had that moment where you were like, I'm not being appreciated, typically that can be one of two ways. One is I've gone as high as I can go and I've hit a glass ceiling, or this has made me feel as low as I can possibly feel. What was your jumping point for that to be like, okay, I'm done with it? Because I've spoken about this on podcasts before. I call it like the fuck it moment. I remember there was one time when I was living in a shared house in northwest London. Life was good, but I was like, I think I might have hit 31 just the year before I bought my house. And I remember like I walked out of the house and the door slammed, and it slammed so loud that I felt like the vibration went through the door, through my body, and then hit my car in front of me. And I was like,
Was
I'm
that your
out.
wake-up call?
No, so I'm out. I'm like, what do I need to do to get a house? And I literally called people and I was like, how do you get a house?
Wow.
Because I am done living with two dudes in Northwest London. And yeah, of course, it's parties and everything else that happens, you know, three guys in their early 30s. But I was like, no, I'm done. I was like, it almost just hit me like an aha moment, an epiphany. So for you, can you describe that moment?
I'll be honest. So I invested about 7 years into the role that I was doing as a director for another real estate agency. And it hit me after 7 years.
In one go?
In just one hit. So I was working, and I never had that balance. I was there from 8 in the morning until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I would only go home to go to bed, have a shower, get ready, and come back to work the next day. And there was just no stopping me. I was like a machine. And people used to say to me, like, where are you getting this energy from? Until 2019, my father died. And I looked at his WhatsApp messages. I was going through the WhatsApp messages. And I'd seen the number of times that he had called me and I never answered. And that broke my heart. But the thing is, my dad died, you know, it wasn't something that we didn't know he was going to die. He passed away because he had a fall. I guess it's easier when you know when they're sick and they're going to pass away and they're going to go into palliative care but in this situation, he had a fall and he passed away. But, you know, rewinding, let's say 2-3 months before he was passing, and maybe a little bit more, I used to have him on my phone as a bottom call or a Zoom call quite many years ago, and he used to, we were like cyber flatmates. He used to be doing his thing in the garage and the kitchen and whatever, and he'd be there and I'd be having my chit chats, meetings, and so on and so forth. I had my headset in so I could hear him, he could hear me. But it was when Dad passed away and I was going through the messages, and I realized that even though I did have that connection with him and we were like these cyber flatmates while I was at work and he was at home, I still didn't sit there and talk to him. He was there, but we weren't having conversations. Do you see do you get what I mean? And there were a number of times that he had called and called and called and called and called, and I never answered. And then I went to the funeral, I came back, and that's where I said, right, I can't do all of this. Not only was I looking after Ready Sales and Leasing for over 20 plus brokers at that moment in time, then I was looking after property management, and the other company, we were looking after more than 300 properties there. And then they wanted me to start a holiday home company, and which I did start with my PA at the time. And that's when I turned around and said, I can't do it. I don't want it. Because I never got the support off of them in that 1 month while I was away in the UK burying my dad. I never got the support off of them during that 1 month. It felt like I was, you know, still working where they should have said, look, Rom, chill, relax, we got this, we'll handle it. Respect the fact that your father's just passed away. You do what you got to do. So from that moment, fast forward a year, where I asked for a pay rise and I was declined it. Again, we'll think about it. Tasha, my sister, had purchased a skydiving ticket for me for my birthday in April, gone. And I wouldn't entertain her with the conversation of skydiving because I'm so shit scared of heights, right? And I'd be like, no, not doing it. Fast forward, she managed to book it on my dad's 1-year death anniversary. She's like, look, do it on this day. It's going to be a special day for you. Dad will be with you. And I went, okay, no problem. She wasn't allowed to talk about it. She wasn't allowed to bring it up in any way or form. On that day, we got up, we showered, I prayed like I do every day, got in the car, went to skydive, got all buttoned up, had the quick little video done, got to the little bus, the bus took us to the plane, and the plane was all of a sudden going up. And it was all happening so very fast. The doors opened, and then I was out of the door. And I remember I had this massive, I just cried. I cried like a baby. I cried. and I just couldn't stop. And he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm fine." He's like, "Let me unbutton you here a little bit." So he unbuttoned me so I could breathe a bit. And then I said, "Slow down, because they can either play up there with you and, make you experience the skydive, or they can just let you kind of float." I said, "Float." And I looked around and I thought, fucking hell, I live in such a beautiful country. And I've not even experienced it. I don't even go out. Remember I said to you, I want my team to experience the country that they live in. They got to have that balance. And that's when, as soon as my feet hit the floor, I had such an adrenaline. Tom, by the way, was knocking on my door 2 years prior. Let's open together, let's open together, let's open together. And I'll be like, "Nope, I'm happy where I am. Nope, I'm happy where I am." Even though I wasn't happy where I was so scared of change that as soon as my feet hit the floor, I thought to myself, I was so scared of doing that, but I love it and I'll do it again. So what else am I so scared of doing? And that's opening my own business. As soon as my feet hit the floor, I rang Tom and I went, "I'm ready. Let's do it." And he was like, "Oh, you're messing around with me, Rom. You haven't replied to my messages for months." I went, "No, I'm ready, Tom. Let's do this." And that was it.
Wow.
We both got together, had a coffee. I really didn't know Tom. He was a tenant of mine. Had a coffee, and that was it. We just went for it. Closed our eyes and just went for it.
I think there's a lot to be said. Firstly, that's probably one of the most incredible stories I've heard on this podcast. I think there's a lot to be said about like the death of a parent, because when COVID happened, I was staying in Burge Views in downtown. As you know, there's 3 towers and there's an annex that connects them at the first 4 floors. Around that time, a very good friend of mine lost her dad. And because even though we were like in place and you had to stay in your apartment, because it was all inside one building, I could go through the annex. I would go and she would cook and we would just sit every night. She would grieve because it had just happened. And I would eat, and at least you get some contact with another human being, which basically no one was getting the first 6 weeks of COVID. And I remember that time, and I messaged her actually just a few days ago to be like, by the way, like your dad dying was not in vain, because the level of depth that we went into about her feelings changed my relationship with my parents. And of course she had to deal with that pain and explain it to me so that I then don't mess it up now.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, I think in 2 weeks, I'm taking my mum and dad to New York for 3 nights. And of course, it's not going to be like hands in the air, like you just don't care moment, right? It's going to be like the tour bus with the ceiling off. But there was a lot of lessons to be passed on about that appreciation. Was there any teachable moments or anything that maybe 24 months prior that if you could go back, you would tell yourself or make changes that the audience listening right now would be like, "Oh yeah, you know what? I needed to hear that."
I would make that time to speak to my parents every day. And I do that with my mum every day. I don't wake up until I've spoken to, I don't leave the house, shall I say, until I've spoken to her. When I come home, while I'm cooking, cleaning, doing whatever I'm doing, she's on the phone with me. And even if she's not saying anything or I'm not saying anything, she's there, she's with me. I would go back and visit as much as I could. And I am doing that a lot more now, even if it's a quick weekend. I'll go there and have dinner with them and come back home to Dubai, and I'm happy with that. I'm booking her out here to come and stay with me a lot longer. So she was coming out initially for a week or 2 weeks, and extended to 3 weeks. Then it was a month. Last year was 2 months. Now she's coming out for 3 months. So, it's easier for her now because she's just retired. So, yeah, she'll be out here for 3 months, which is exciting. And when she's here, we go and do things together, which, I love. Things that you get on Instagram, 5 things to ask your mum and dad. I actually save those and I sit there and I ask those questions.
Have you considered videoing it?
No, it's funny because I actually started doing that with my husband, Allah. It's like 5 things that you would ask your wife or 5 things that you'd ask your husband. And I started to video that, and that's something that I want to do with my mum actually, is start to video that.
Yeah.
And because she likes cooking, I actually want to start a little channel for her on cooking.
Yeah.
And get a little podcast and such all set up for her because she loves it. And at the end of the day, I don't want to take that away from her.
Yeah.
It's the first thing she does when she comes home to me. Straight in the kitchen.
Straight in the kitchen, yeah. Are you the Patels that put the bananas inside the raita or not?
Bananas in the Raita. No.
Because there is some Patels that do that.
No. Bananas in the Raita.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. I once went to my friend's house, Patel house in Loughborough, and I was eating Dana kaki.
Are they Kenyan Gujaratis or are they Indian Patels?
They were Indian Patels.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
They're different. Yeah.
Yeah. They put some extra sugar in there.
Yeah, no.
So speaking of your mum, I was delighted to hear this story because it was almost like the equivalent of a shopkeeper story in terms of grit, but it was in probably one of the biggest machines, one of the biggest brands in the UK, like an institution. Like, I mean, your mum was at David Lloyd, which is a massive luxury gym group in the UK, but the brand is up there with when you look at things like Cadbury's and Walker's. I mean, it's a day-to-day brand. Tell us a bit about your mum's story, and maybe if you think that work ethic is hereditary, because she only retired like 5 minutes ago, right?
Absolutely, yeah. 43 years later.
In David Lloyd.
David
Lloyd came to her retirement party.
Absolutely. No, well, he actually done a video. David Lloyd's son came to the retirement party, so he flew in, which was so lovely of him. And David Lloyd himself did a little video, and I'll show that to you when we finish today.
Yeah.
Again, so inspiring because 1984, when that was the very first club that opened back in 1984, the old airport hangars in Cranford, would you say? She went for an interview. She met David Lloyd and her brother. They interviewed her. She got the job immediately as head chef. And 43 years down the line, she was still head chef, and she'd seen that club go through a million changes, millions of members and members of staff, from your celebrities to your day-to-day Joe blogs that are just walking in and out. At the age of, when I was 16, she had me working in the kitchen as a wash-up girl. From there, I learned a lot from Mum there as well. I spent a lot of time with Mum there. Yeah.
So in our first conversation, you never mentioned she was a head chef.
Did I not?
So no, that's crazy. I'd assumed, because of the way you are, that she'd have been like, you know, an exec or like in operations or something like tough cookie stuff, because you do have that tough cookie energy about you. I think initially, as people get to know you, you hear the softer side, but like, I thought she'd have been like a hardcore, like in the business side, but she was feeding or responsible for feeding thousands of people. Many ways you keep a similar responsibility over your staff as well, right? So when I said to you, like, where's that empathy come from? You could say it comes from nowhere, but maybe from her, like that kind of like maternal instinct.
I think you're right there, because in fact I was speaking to her just yesterday, and she said that she'd popped into the club to say hello to the team, and at the retirement party I obviously said, look, whoever's here, drinks are on me, and I had an open tab for everyone that was there that day, and one of the managers approached her and said that your daughter is just amazing, and your energy and her energy put together are, you're both alike. So yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, looking at it from the outside, I guess you can see that I get that from my mum. Yeah.
What made her commit for 43 years? I mean, you've been successful a long time. She could have hung up her spatula a long time ago, right? Like,
I don't know. I sometimes I think it's.
You must have told her, right, Mum, call it a day. It's fine. I
told her, call it a day 3-4 years ago. I was like, enough. You don't need to work. She's like, okay, I just want to do 2 hours here and there. I was like, well, what's the point doing 2 hours? By the time you get there, put your apron on, you're going to be out. I think it was mainly because she loved interacting with her members, and she loved cooking for her members and the staff that are there. And she liked, well, it's just seeing happy faces, right? And cooking comes from the heart. So yeah. She was always doing all the cooking for all the functions as well, like the Diwali parties or the Christmas party or that party or this party. But yeah, I think it was just what made her hang in there that long was knowing that the members were happy and they were just getting home-cooked, loving food from Mummy Suki. That's what they all call her, Mummy Suki.
Right, yeah. That tends to happen. That tends to happen, that they become like a universal mother in that building. To what level of detail does she know what you do? Because my parents did come in IT. So, like, to what level of detail does she know what you do, and what does she think of it?
She, no matter how much I tell her what I do, she just knows that I own a couple of companies, but she doesn't know the level of what I do on a day-to-day basis. As much as I try and tell her and explain it, she doesn't get it. But it's fine. I mean... it is what it is.
Should we break it down now then? Because I just had the previous podcast was with Tom, your co-founder, and I said that there was a time when we all started off in business where it was like one like rider, one chariot, one horse. Like we would all launch one thing, and that was plenty. And we saw generations of people just have that one shop or that one job. Whereas now in my ecosystem, I've got creative content agency, I've got my friends, your friends, 6,500 people. I've got a lot going on podcast. I teach for the Chartered Institute of Marketing. I've got 4 to 5 horses strapped to my one chariot just to get me to where I want to go in life. In one of your businesses, you've got 3 divisions. So you've got the brokerage, you've got snagging, and you've got property management. What was the thought process behind that architecture and building it that way? Because it's a big machine to build, and you only built this machine 2 years ago plus change, right? Coming out of COVID as founder of TheProperty.ae.
Yeah, just over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It all started when I was working for my VIPs, okay? The VIPs that I used to sell to or purchase properties for them. I wanted to be able to provide them an end-to-end service. What I mean by that is I wanted to make sure that they always came to me, right? So when I purchased a property for them, I'd make sure that I listed it for rent, and then I found the right tenant. But I wanted to make sure that that tenant would be the right tenant for the home, so I'd carried out due diligence, and I gave that information to the landlord. Then I would go in and do some inspections inside the home just to make sure that we're not going to have any problems with that particular tenant. I was just auditory in my own way. I knew that there was a process. I didn't want to have any problems with my landlord because I wanted that landlord still with me in my bucket, shall I say. So I provided that privately for my clients. That's when, as a real estate broker, I was offered a role in property management with, I think there was like 20 properties that they had under their belt. And the current manager wasn't doing a great job. He had left. I'd stepped in and took over those units. I then started to build that division with a number of property management properties to go into that portfolio. It was just the way I handled it. I don't know what it was. I was looking at them like they were my own properties. I sat there and said, these are all my properties. How would I feel if this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened? What would I do? How can I do it better? I analyze a lot. I always go back and think, okay, I didn't do that so well today. How could I have done it better? Or I said this or I said that. Maybe I could have said that and maybe I could have said this. So I analyze my day every night and every week and try and make myself better in my own way. Then the snagging came about where we had purchased, as a family, a penthouse on the Dream Palm Residences. And we were looking for a snagging company to inspect it. And the family were like, why don't you just go there and have a look at it? And I was like, well, not really. I would rather have a professional have a look at it. Then I found a snagging company called Snag and Inspect. There was a guy called Douglas who owned it. Lovely guy. And we rendered his services. And I said to him, look, do you mind if I come and have a look at what you lot do? I'm really interested in how you do it. And he was like, yeah, sure. Back then, about 11 years ago, they were mainly visual inspections. They weren't using the tools that we use today to carry out the inspections. So I'd gone in there and I was watching the team doing what they're doing. And then I looked at my PA, who was heavily tattooed, Zainab, love her. I said, we can do this. And she looked at me and said, she goes, I think we can. We went back to the office. We put our heads together on how we could market this. And we marketed it. And I spoke to the CEO of the company that I was working for at the time. And I said, right, I'd like to market this and let's get it out there. Let's put a rate out there, price per square foot, blah, 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 blah. Because you're off your rocker. You're not going to get, you're not going to,
So that,
pass
just to clarify,
this
that's like a certain number of dirhams that you charge per square foot that you're snagging, yeah?
Yeah, you're off your rocker. You're not going to be able to do this. I was like, I will, trust me. And we advertised it, we marketed it, and we started to get leads. And that's when myself and my heavily tattooed PA would go to the site. She'd be making the notes, I'll be taking the photos, and I'd be adding the red tape in the areas where I assumed or thought that there were defects inside the property. And then I'd go back, I'd create a report, this one application online, and then I'd copy and paste all her notes under the description, and we'd send that to the developer, and the developer accepted it, and they started the rectification works on the report.
Wow.
And then from there, I thought to myself, I can't do 5, 6 inspections over 2-3 days. It's impossible. I'm going to have to start hiring staff. And that's
how many snags have you done in your career?
Me personally, probably over 100.
Wow.
Myself and Zainab, probably
Wow.
over 100. Until I said to myself and Zainab that we need to actually get engineers to come in and do that. And my first engineer that I hired was Ahmed Wadi, and he's still with me today.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's interesting, that you pick up these themes, especially when we go into depth, when we're not just like hanging out at a video shoot. It's like you built this company based on the work you were already doing at your previous brokerage. You built it in your vision. You've had a moment that I've had a couple of times in life where I've been to certain events and been like, I can do that.
Yeah.
And there's no convincing you otherwise. You built the snagging company. You built a lot of stuff in your vision. Maybe a good place to end and wrap up, at least this first time that you're on ALGO. We've got to do this again because there's so much to talk about. But talk to me about the transition from employee, broker, executive property manager to company owner. What was that transition like for you? I know the decision was made as soon as your feet hit the ground.
I still feel the anxiety inside me.
talk to me through it as we wrap up.
The whole transition was very scary.
What did you fear?
I just felt that I kept fearing that I was going to fail, and I don't like to fail. I don't, and I won't. And the only thing that kept me going is I kept saying to myself that Dad's with you, Dad's with you, Dad's with you. And that kind of gave me the strength to just keep going. But my biggest fear was that I'm going to fail. I'm going to go back with the tail between my legs. And I was told that my business would fail. I was told that I would be begging for my job back. I was told that I'd never be able to make it. And I'd end up packing my bags and going back to the UK. And when someone tells me things like that, I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So it was all kind of systems go. And the anxiety, the sleepless nights, I cried. I started running out of money. And I was like, am I doing the right thing? And without that mental, emotional support from Tom as well and my family, I don't know where I'd be. And prayer. I love to pray. And I pray every morning, and that's kind of got me to where I am.
Nice. We've got to dig in more on this. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on. I think there's so much about your story that people from all backgrounds will be able to relate to, because everyone has those effort moments. Everyone has those moments of inspiration or relies on things to drive on. And I'm really glad that we got a chance to kind of dig into that. We've got to do it again.
Sure.
As a final question, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, what's your Instagram? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Romaa'l, ROMAAL _ TheProperty.
Okay, nice. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.